live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Global. We'll get to the top stories from India and the region. I'm Gautam Roy, and for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in London, Ollie Barrett. Happy to have you with us, Ollie.
Good to be with you, Gautam. It's just gone 12:30 here in London, 1:30 p.m. across Central Europe. Coming up in the next half hour, Sullivan meets Xi, Starmer meets Macron, and the British public gets ready to potentially meet a new smoking ban. First, the headlines.
U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan calls on Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing, says President Joe Biden is looking forward to talks with Xi in the coming weeks. The Kremlin says Telegram boss Pavel Durov's case should not be made into a political persecution as he is placed under formal investigation in France. The UAE also says it's in touch with French authorities on the matter. And at least 3 people have been killed so far, and millions have been told to evacuate as possibly the strongest storm to hit the region. Typhoon Shanshan hits southwest Japan hard. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has met Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing on Thursday. He has been on a 3-day visit to Beijing for wide-ranging talks aimed at easing tensions between the U.S. and China ahead of November's U.S. elections. Sullivan told Xi that U.S. President Biden is committed to managing the relationship to avoid conflict and looks forward to engaging with you in coming weeks. Sullivan's agenda included tensions over Taiwan, the South China Sea and Russia, and U.S. demands for more Chinese help to stem the flow of ingredients for fentanyl, the leading cause of drug overdoses in the United States.
President Biden is committed to responsibly managing this consequential relationship to ensure that competition does not veer into conflict or confrontation, and to work together where our interests align. We are committed to maintaining high-level diplomacy, and to this end, President Biden looks forward to engaging with you again in the coming weeks.
Southwestern Japan has been hammered by Typhoon Shanshan with more than 70 people injured. Elsewhere in Japan, 3 people have been killed in a landslide created by the knock-on effects of the storm. Shanshan is thought to be one of the most powerful typhoons on record in Japan and has brought extreme wind, deluges as well as storm surges. Chris Gilbert reports from Tokyo.
After slowly approaching Japan for days, Typhoon Shanshan hit the southwestern coast of the western island of Kyushu with a thud on Thursday. It's one of the most powerful typhoons that Japan has seen on record, and it brought with it rainfall, more rainfall than most cities in Kyushu see in an average August. And for Oita Prefecture in Kyushu, that meant that 25,000 people were given forced evacuation orders, not recommendations, forced evacuation orders to find high ground or to leave their house to safer buildings as many rivers in the region burst their banks. It also brought wind gusts of up to 250 kilometers an hour, and this hit Miyazaki City on the east of Kyushu the hardest. Many buildings there had their roofs ripped off, walls damaged as well. About 160 reports of damaged property came in throughout Thursday. It also resulted in many dozens of injuries, including 22 people who were injured when windows exploded onto them due to the extremely high winds. There has been disruption to local businesses. Convenience stores and supermarkets have been closed throughout the island, and the effects of the storm are spreading throughout Japan. Even though the typhoon itself is moving at a very slow pace, the warm air from it is creating rain and deluges for parts of the country hundreds of kilometers away from it, including in Aichi Prefecture in the middle of Japan, where there was a landslide that hit a house with 5 occupants, and that resulted in 2 of them being rescued, but also the 3 fatalities that this typhoon has brought so far. It's also disrupted travel. Many roads in Kyushu have been blocked by fallen trees and debris. About 600 flights have been suspended or cancelled, affecting about 33,000 passengers. Bullet trains throughout the country have been affected throughout Thursday and are going to be into Friday as this typhoon very, very slowly inches its way onto the main island of Japan. It is looking like it is going to continue up to the major cities of Osaka and Tokyo towards the weekend. By that time, the forecast is for it to be downgraded to a tropical storm, but authorities are urging vigilance because the danger is not over yet for anyone in Japan. Chris Gilbert in Tokyo reporting for DD India.
Telegram founder and CEO Pavel Durov has been placed under formal investigation in France as part of a probe into organized crime on the messaging app. He has to pay a €5 million deposit and is barred from leaving French territory. Ollie Barrett is in London and gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Now, Ollie, just that there's been a lot of stir around the world over this arrest, especially where Moscow and Abu Dhabi are concerned. Now, is there more to this action against Durov than meets the eye?
Well, it's certainly a question that's being asked, as you suggest. And French President Emmanuel Macron insisted earlier in the week that the detention was not political in any way. Durov has not been remanded in custody, as you were saying, placed under judicial supervision and has to pay over $5 million deposit. He was charged on several counts of failing to curb extremist and illegal content on the popular messaging app following a hearing with investigating magistrates in Paris. And we can go to Ross Cullen now, who's joining us live with more from Paris. Ross, what are we hearing from Mr. Durov's camp?
Hi Ollie, let me bring you a statement from one of his lawyers, David Olivier Kaminsky, who was speaking after that decision was made to release Mr. Durov, but under judicial supervision to charge Mr. Durov and to make sure that he does not leave France after having paid his bail. After that decision was taken, Mr. Durov's lawyer reacted, quote, "It is totally absurd to think that the head of a social network could be involved in criminal acts that do not concern him, neither directly or indirectly." And Mr. Kaminsky went on, Mr. Durov's lawyer. Now, Telegram issued a statement a little bit earlier after the initial arrest of Mr. Durov once he landed here in Paris on Saturday night, and Mr. Kaminsky reiterated that statement. He was saying that Telegram complies in all respects with European rules concerning digital technology. It is a moderator in the same standards as other social networks. And so Telegram and Mr. Durov's lawyers sticking to the assurance that they believe that Mr. Durov has done nothing wrong. He has nothing to hide, and he denies all these allegations.
Ross Cullen, thank you. Staying in France, and the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has been meeting with the French President Emmanuel Macron for talks in Paris as he continues with his plan to try and reset relations with the European Union. The two leaders discussed Ukraine, the conflict in West Asia, the UK's relationship with Europe, and the French-British bilateral relationship as well. Keir Starmer took office last month and has made improved European ties right at the heart of his efforts to try and boost Britain's economic growth. And the UK Prime Minister insists a desire to reset ties with the European Union does not mean reversing Brexit. Before Paris, Keir Starmer's European tour also took in talks in Berlin with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, and they began talks on a new cooperation agreement between the two nations.
When it comes to the wider reset with Europe, I'm absolutely clear that we do want a reset. I've been able to repeat that here today, a reset with Europe, a reset with the EU. That does not mean reversing Brexit or re-entering the single market or the customs union, but it does mean a closer relationship on a number of fronts, including the economy, including defence, including exchanges. But we do not have plans for the youth mobility scheme, but we do have plans for a closer relationship between us and the EU as part of that White set.
From my point of view, it is about creating good relations between European Union and Great Britain. This can get better every day and everyone has an interest in this. The historic decision has been made in Great Britain. The British have left the European Union, but we are friends. We live on one continent. From our perspective, and we therefore believe that there is really good reason to do everything we can to ensure that relations between our two countries, but also between the European Union and Great Britain, are as good as possible.
Moving on to the Gaza conflict now, and after the United States, the European Union appears to be now seeking to sanction some Israeli ministers over violence against Palestinians. EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell said that sanctions would be over hate messages against Palestinians and the violation of international law. He did not name any of the Israeli ministers who might be targeted with the accusations.
I initiated the procedures in order to ask the member states if they consider appropriate, including in our list of sanctions, some Israeli ministers has been launching hate messages, unacceptable hate messages against the Palestinians, and proposing things that goes clearly against international law and is an incitation to commit war crimes.
Washington announced sanctions earlier this week on an Israeli settler group over violence against Palestinians. The sanctions were announced on the same day that Israel launched a wide-scale raid on the West Bank. The Israeli military says on Thursday it killed 5 Palestinian fighters who were hiding inside a mosque in Tulkarm in the occupied West Bank. On Wednesday, Israeli troops launched a large-scale operation in the West Bank, backed by helicopters, drones and armoured personnel carriers. At least 10 terrorists were said to have been killed in the operation. There were coordinated raids across 4 northern West Bank cities, Jenin, Nablus, Tubas and Tulkarem, where the military has been focusing much of its recent operations. Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance says the U.S. should not micromanage the Israel-Hamas conflict. Speaking at a rally in Wisconsin, he stressed that Israel will be provided with precision weapons to try and defeat Hamas.
It is not our business to micromanage Israel's war in the Middle East. Hamas is an evil organization. What we should be doing as an ally of Israel is empowering them to wipe Hamas off the face of the earth and get this war over. It's very simple.
Russian forces say they've captured 2 villages in eastern Ukraine in the Lugansk and Donetsk regions. Ukraine says it shot down 2 out of 5 missiles and 60 drones out of 74 in an overnight attack by Russia. The drone attack on 9 regions marks the 3rd attempt in 4 days on the Ukrainian capital Kiev. The drone debris damaged an apartment building and caused a fire in a non-residential building. The UK government is considering an extension of the public indoor smoking ban to some outdoor venues. Under the new proposed plans, smoking could be banned in places like pub gardens, outdoor restaurants, and outside hospitals and sports grounds. Areas outside universities and children's play areas and small parks could also be included. The measures are for now just being considered as part of a tougher version of the previous government's tobacco and vapes legislation, which was dropped just before the last general election. The proposals would potentially impact all 4 nations of the UK, but they would first be subject to a public consultation. That public consultation could be very interesting. Gautam, back to you.
Thanks a lot, Ollie, for that helping hand from London. And there's still more to come on DD India Global. Heavy downpour in India's western state of Gujarat causes a flood-like situation. Rescue and relief work is on at full swing. And a circus school in Morocco is giving youth a second chance at a better life. Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, India's western state of Gujarat is experiencing a flood-like situation with heavy rainfall continuing for the last 3 days. The Indian Met Department has issued a red alert for multiple districts in Gujarat, warning people of more downpours in the coming days. The National Disaster Response Force and State Disaster Response Force teams have been deployed to increase the pace of relief operations. Army, Air Force and Coast Guard are also deployed to assist the rescue and relief work. The situation is worst in Vadodara city as it's grappling with flooding after the Vishwamitra River, which flows through it, breached its banks and entered residential colonies, inundating buildings, roads and vehicles. Meanwhile, a 10-foot-long crocodile was rescued by a team of people in Vadodara after it came out of a river and was seen strolling on a rain-swept road. It was prowling literally there. The reptile was captured by a team of wildlife rescuers and then handed over to the Forest Department. With heavy rainfalls across Gujarat, many rivers are flooded, leading to crocodiles and other reptiles coming onto the streets. Let's now tell you about the post-flood situation in the northeastern Indian state of Tripura. An interministerial central team has started an on-the-spot assessment of the damage due to the floods in 4 districts of Tripura. The team, led by Director of India's Central Water Commission, Mahesh Kumar, visited the Gomati district and inspected the affected areas, ravaged paddy fields and other damage done to homes, schools and embankments due to incessant rainfall which triggered floods. The Gomati district in Tripura has incurred losses amounting to $11 billion. The state government in its preliminary estimates has said that the floods brought in massive loss of property as well as infrastructure amounting to $150 billion. With the world trying to find out ways to deal with problems related to climate change, Associated Chambers of Commerce and Industry of India organized ASSOCHAM Environment and Carbon Conference in New Delhi. The theme of the conference is fostering a collaborative ecosystem for achieving net zero by 2070. Minister of State for Environment, Forest and Climate, Kirtivardhan Singh, participated in the inaugural session along with leaders from the domain of sustainable development. The minister listed out key interventions required at the industrial and individual levels to achieve India's net zero target.
It is the emission emitted by the individual in their daily life and by the industry in producing the goods and the services that are required by the civilization today, what are required by the people today. So how do we increase the efficiency of both, the sustainability of both individual life, as is given to us, as is talked about by Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Modi ji in Life Mission, that how we become more sustainable in our daily life, and also how do we increase the efficiency of our industries. See, we have achieved our targets of our renewable energies, especially in solar. We have achieved our emission reducing targets, and we are well on our path to achieving our NDCs.
Let's now get to some other stories making news around the world. President Ranil Wickremesinghe's manifesto for the 2024 presidential election in Sri Lanka was officially launched in Colombo. The manifesto, titled 5 Years of Winning the Country with Ranil, outlines 5 principal components: Theravada trade economy, Operation Beyond 2025, Make a Radiant Society with the Motherland, and Unite Sri Lanka. A Hong Kong court on Thursday found 2 editors of the now defunct Stan News media outlet guilty. In the verdict, the judge said that the duo have been found guilty of conspiring to publish seditious publications based on 17 articles. The judge did not immediately hand down a sentence, but the pair, Chung Pui Quinn and Patrick Lam, could now face a maximum sentence of up to 2 years in prison and a fine. The world is marking the International Day Against Nuclear Tests across nearly 8 decades. More than 2,000 nuclear tests were conducted at more than 60 sites around the world. With the scenario getting grim, UN Secretary General in a message said that the world must speak with one voice to end this practice once and for all. In Morocco's Saleh, a circus school is offering young people training in circus arts to promote their social integration. Students are finding the school to be a great place to spend their time as compared to being on the streets. The school has grown tremendously and welcomes young people from all walks of life. And that's it for now in this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from DD India and across the world on our mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS. You can scan the QR code on the screen and download the app now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Global.